For more, we're joined now by Eric Mandel, founder and director of the Middle East Political Information Network, and a senior editor for security at the Jerusalem Report. Eric, we know Israel likely cannot hit Fordo alone, at least not without some major risk. And so, do you think that the movement of B-2 bombers is a real sign that the United States is preparing to step in militarily, or is this just another strategic posturing, almost pushing Iran to negotiate, even if it is still under Israeli fire, but not direct U.S. fire?
So thank you for having me. I think we need to look at the tea leaves, actually has the president's ear. And it is what is reported, at least openly, is that the three people who have the presidency here right now are Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Dan Kane, CIA Director John Ratcliffe, and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. Steve Witkoff and I believe the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff are thought to be the most dovish of that group. What you hear, again, if they're not who's not in the Situation Room, you don't have Tulsi Gabbard, who's the isolationist of the group, but you also don't have Marco Rubio. And I know from times in the Senate that Marco Rubio truly understands the threat of Iran, maybe more than anybody else in the administration. But by deferring a strike for 2 weeks at least, and again, we don't know, it could be less than 2 weeks, could be more than 2 weeks because the president has changed his mind, are the Iranians concluding that this is a bluff by President Trump? And then what action would be taken? And I think this is a very important point. People think this is just about Fordo. But if it is just about Fordo, this will be a strategic mistake. The United States is going to need to be active for probably days, if not weeks, destroying not only the underground part of Fordo, but also there's still more underground in Natanz and Isfahan. It also means that if they want there not to be another war, that the United States has to help Israel with ballistic storage and missiles, cruise missiles, and drones production, which would also actually help in the war with Ukraine. So the United States, if it does commit, my country has to commit, has to not just think about Fordo. There is more to do to really degrade the nuclear program and set it back years, not just months.
Eric, off of that note, for especially our American audience that is watching this unfold, what is at stake here? Why should the United States even consider joining this war beyond just supporting Israel? There could be some real ramifications actually felt in the United States as well.
Well, first of all, it is America first to have America join its ally here. The president has been incredibly clear for 15 years at least that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. So what is it about American national security interests that are affected by Iranian nuclear weapons program and a bomb? They're already pretty close to being a threshold nuclear weapons state. That is really proliferation throughout the Gulf. Because if Iran gets a nuclear bomb, the Arab world is going to want it. And then you're dealing with Saudi Arabia, UAE, Egypt, Turkey, Jordan, and you can go on. And then the chance that that could fall into the hands of Sunni jihadists, because none of those regimes are so strong. And then that really turns to a horrific, apocalyptic type of scenario. So stopping Iran from having a nuclear weapon is for stability, not only of the region, but for American security interests.
And Eric, Iran's foreign minister says there is still room for diplomacy, but is there? Are we already past the point where negotiations could stop a direct U.S.-Iran clash, or is this also what Trump is hoping for? He wants to see diplomacy.
I believe the president really would like diplomacy and is hoping that the continued Israeli strikes and the movement of these B-2 bombers, first they were in Diego Garcia, and now you have the ones going to Guam, is enough to pressure Iran. Iran, it is believed, still wants to survive at the end of the day. And so if that's the calculation, this is really up to the Iranians and to give them some face-saving way out of it, is what they were hoping. But Iran is at this point thinking that everything is a bluff. And they also may think that they have enough ballistic missiles to continue terrorizing Israel. And maybe they've calculated the number of Israeli interceptors I know that Yaakov Lapin spoke recently that he thought that Israel had prepared for the number of interceptors that it needed, certainly Arrow 3s. But I think there's a lot of people in the world that are worrying that there really is a finite amount of them. And eventually, when they send 100 ballistic missiles, only where 10 or 5 get through, maybe down the road they send 100 and maybe 30 get through. They may, the Iranians are very smart, and they learned a lot from the April and October attacks, which seemed to be big failures, but they learned how to strategize, and they seem to be getting more missiles in. And again, if interceptors go down, they may think they could wait this out. And the other part here is, who is really running the show there? Is it the Supreme Leader, or is it the IRGC and their influence? When that aging Supreme Leader, who's now has a succession plan, passes on, whether naturally or not, it is the IRGC, which is going to maybe put in a puppet Supreme Leader, and it may be even more dangerous.
Very interesting and concerning developments at play here. Eric Mendel, thank you for joining us and discussing your thoughts on what the United States could be doing right now.
My pleasure.